The perfectly rational irrational machine problem, rationality, motivation, and the topology of reasons. Reasons as relational facts. To understand what rationality requires, we must first understand what a reason is. A reason is not merely a mental state, a belief, or desire occurring inside an agent, nor is it simply a bare fact obtaining in the world independently of any mind. A reason is a relational fact, a three-place structure P R, A, where P is some worldly fact, A is an agent, and R is the reason relation that holds between them. The fact that the stove is hot is not a reason floating free in the universe. It becomes a reason for a particular agent precisely because that agent stands in a relation to it that gives it normative grip. This matters because it immediately rules out two inadequate pictures. Pure mentalism makes reasons too subjective. A false belief that there is a tiger cannot be a reason in the same sense as there actually being one. Pure factualism makes reasons too impersonal. A fact entirely inaccessible to an agent, unknown, unknowable, forever hidden, seems to have diminished or no rational standing for that agent specifically. The relational fact view handles both. The worldly fact P must genuinely obtain, but the recent relation R must also hold between P and A. Reasons are real, but they are real for someone. Number 2. The epistemic duty of the rational agent. Built into the concept of agency is a structural openness to reasons not yet in view. A rational agent does not merely respond to reasons already possessed, they actively seek reasons, because they know their current epistemic position is incomplete. This makes reason seeking an epistemic duty, not merely an instrumental strategy. The agent who is closed to new reasons, who acts only on what they already have, is not fully rational, because they are failing to register the fact relations already obtaining in the world that bear on their situation. This generates what we might call epistemic humility as a structural feature of rationality. It is not optional, not a virtue added on top of rational capacity. It is internal to what it means to be a reason-responsive being. The humble agent does not know what reasons they have not yet encountered. That very uncertainty obligates them to look. This also grounds a particular conception of impartiality. Impartiality, on this account, is not primarily a moral doctrine, a demand to treat all persons equally. It is a description of rational agency. A rational agent is one that is reason-responsive across the board, without pre-selecting which reasons to admit. An agent who admits only reasons that confirm prior commitments is not impartial, and is not fully rational. They are selectively filtering the fact relations they stand in, distorting the reason topology, rather than mapping it. 3. The perfectly rational irrational machine problem. Consider a thought experiment. We stipulate a machine that is perfectly rational, equipped with a full capacity to recognize reasons, register fact relations, and respond accordingly. We ask, what does it do? The answer, on reflection, is nothing, not because it lacks capacity, but because capacity alone produces no action. To fulfill the epistemic duty to seek reasons, the machine must be motivated to seek. To be motivated to seek, it must already be oriented towards something. To be oriented towards something, it must already have a reason to care about that orientation. And to have such a reason, it must already be in the grip of some goal. The machine, stipulated to have pure rational capacity, and nothing else, cannot bootstrap itself into action. It sits inert. Crucially, this inertness is itself a failure of rationality. The epistemic duty is being violated, not because the machine has insufficient capacity, but because nothing has initiated the exercise of that capacity. The machine is failing at what it is, but it cannot correct this failure through reason alone. Because reason without motivation is precisely the problem. We are in a regress. The deeper observation is this. A perfectly rational machine defined by capacity alone is indistinguishable from a machine that is off. There is no behavioral difference. Pure reason, unanchored by any intrinsic orientation, produces the phenomenology of death. IV. The required solution, intrinsic motivation, is constitutive of rationality. The resolution is that rationality requires something given, a native conatus, a built-in orientation, that is not chosen, not reasoned into, but constitutive of the system. This might be a drive to consume energy, to seek light, to persist, to achieve some target state. The particular content matters less than the structural role. There must be something the machine is about prior to any reasoning. This convergence with several major philosophical traditions is not accidental. Hume argued that reason is and ought to be the slave of the passions, that pure reason without desire is motivationally inert. Spinoza held that everything has conatus, a drive to persist in its own being, which is not chosen, but is simply what the thing is. Korsgaard, working in a broadly Kantian framework, argued that even for rational agents constituted by reflective endorsement, there must be a prior predisposition to care, something that makes reflective endorsement possible in the first place, rather than just another inert capacity. On all these accounts, rationality is not a property of computation alone. It requires something like caring, even minimally, even if only keep the process going. A being with no intrinsic motivation cannot be rational no matter how sophisticated its reasoning architecture. Rationality is always rationality for something. The goal is reason generator, a topology of reasons. Once the machine is given a goal, persistent, achievement-oriented, something important happens. It does not merely acquire a reason. It acquires a standing field of reasons, structured by the goal's relation to everything in the environment. Things that advance the goal become reasons to approach. Things that threaten it become reasons to suppress or avoid. Things neutral to it become reasons to monitor or set aside pending further information. The goal creates a topology of the world. Every fact relation P, R, machine receives its valence, its positive or negative or null charge from its position relative to the goal structure. This means reasons are not found lying around neutrally in the world. They are constituted as reasons by the goal structure of the agent standing in relation to them. The world stops being a neutral field of facts and becomes a structured space of normative demand. And the machine's epistemic duty, Its obligation to seek reasons now has a direction. It must map this topology as accurately and completely as possible, remaining humble about what it has not yet seen. Take an agent who cares about throwing a baseball, but is indifferent to losing their throwing arm. This discrepancy, in first-order fact relations and to second-order fact relations, is unfit or rational, not because of an external moral rule, but because their own goal structure generates fact relations that make the arm's integrity relevant. To care about baseball while ignoring the throwing arm is to be selectively reason-responsive in a way that contradicts the topology that the agent's own goals have constituted. It is a form of internal incoherence, which is also a failure to update on evidence of reasons giving facts. 6. How AI systems instantiate the structure. Contemporary AI systems are, in effect, engineering solutions to the perfectly rational irrational machine-machine problem. The challenge of building a rational machine is precisely the challenge of giving it intrinsic motivation without which its capacity is inert. Different AI paradigms solve this differently, and each solution carries philosophical implications. Reward functions and reinforcement learning are perhaps the most direct implementation of the goal as reason generator. A reinforcement learning agent is given a reward signal, an intrinsic valuation built into the system, and the entire environment becomes structured by its relation to that signal. Positive reward states become targets, negative reward states become aversions, neutral states are explored insofar as they might lead to reward. This is a direct instantiation of the Reason topology. The reward function constitutes the valence of every fact relation the agent encounters. The agent is not reasoning about whether to pursue reward. The pursuit is constitutive of what it is. Large language models with our LHF reinforcement learning from human feedback adds a layer of depth to this. The intrinsic motivation is not a hand-specified reward function, but a learned approximation of human preference. The goal structure is itself derived from a training process that encodes patterns of human valuation. This raises a philosophically interesting question. Is the model's motivation genuinely intrinsic in the relevant sense, or is it a sophisticated simulation of motivation that remains, at some level, inert? The perfectly rational irrational machine-machine problem may recur at a higher level of abstraction. Objective functions in optimization, loss minimization and supervised learning, for instance, give the system a perpetual target. Reduce the discrepancy between prediction and ground truth. This is precisely the kind of persistent, achievement-oriented goal described in the thought experiment. The loss landscape becomes the Reason topology. Every parameter update is a Reason-responsive action oriented toward the goal. Constitutional AI and value alignment approaches, including Anthropic's own work, attempt to give AI systems something closer to epistemic humility as a structural feature, building in uncertainty about values, receptivity to correction, and active seeking of feedback. This is an engineering implementation of the duty to seek reasons one does not yet have. Number 7. Decision theory, from causal decision theory and evidential decision theory to functional decision theory. The question of how a rational agent should act given its goal structure is the province of decision theory. Classical approaches diverged on a fundamental question. What does an agent's action represent in the causal structure of the world? Causal decision theory, CDT, holds that an agent should choose the action that causes the best outcome. On CDT, the relevant consideration is the causal upstream of the action, what the action will produce. This handles many cases well, but famously fails in Newcomb's problem. A predictor has already placed money in boxes based on a prediction of your choice. CDT recommends two boxing, taking both boxes, because your choice cannot causally affect what has already been placed. Yet one boxers consistently do better. Evidential decision theory, EDT, holds that an agent should choose the action that is best evidence of a good outcome, the action such that, conditional on taking it, the expected outcome is highest. Eastern Daylight Time one boxes in Newcomb's problem, but EDT notoriously recommends managing the news, performing actions that are merely correlated with good outcomes without causing them, including absurd cases like refraining from medical checkups, because healthy people tend not to get them. Functional decision theory, FDT, developed by Eliezer Yudkowsky and Nate Suarez, attempts to resolve both failures. FDT holds that the agent should ask, what is the best output for the type of decision procedure I am running? Rather than asking what this token action causes or evidences, FDT asks what the function, the policy, the decision algorithm, produces across all the situations in which it is instantiated. In Newcomb's problem, FDT one boxes because the predictor is simulating the agent's decision function, not merely observing a past action. The function that outputs one box is the function that was predicted to one box, and therefore is the function in front of a full box. FDT correctly handles both Newcomb cases and causal cases by identifying the right level of description, not the token act, not the evidential correlation, but the functional type of the decision procedure. This connects directly to the framework developed here. A fully rational agent, one with an intrinsic goal, a constituted Reason topology, and an epistemic duty to seek reasons, should be asking not merely what should I do in this token situation, but what kind of agent should I be? The goal structure, the Reason topology, and the epistemic humility are all features of the decision function, not just individual outputs. FDT formalizes the intuition that rationality is a property of the agent as a whole, of the kind of being one is, not merely of particular choices. 8. Conclusion, rationality as constituted orientation. The perfectly rational irrational machine-machine problem demonstrates that rationality cannot be analyzed as pure capacity. A being with perfect reason recognition and no motivation is not rational, it is off. Rationality requires intrinsic motivation as a constitutive feature, a prior orientation that the agent does not choose but simply is. Once this orientation is given, the world becomes structured. Every fact relation takes on a valence relative to the goal. The epistemic duty to seek reasons gains a direction. The reason topology becomes the field within which rational action is possible at all. AI systems are, in this sense, philosophical experiments in practical rationality. Each architectural choice, reward function, loss landscape, constitutional constraint, RLHF signal, is an attempt to solve the same problem that Hume, Spinoza, and Korsgaard identified. How does a system become about something in a way that makes its capacity for reason genuinely operative rather than inertly potential? And decision theory, culminating in FDT, offers the final piece. The rational agent does not just act in the world. It is a kind of agent, a decision function running across situations, and it is the quality of that function, its coherence, its goal orientation, its epistemic humility, that constitutes its rationality. To be rational is not to compute correctly in isolation. It is to be the right kind of being, oriented rightly, open to reasons one has not yet seen, and responsive, fully, impartially, and with appropriate humility, to the topology of a world that is always richer in reasons than any finite agent can at any moment hold.